to tell you about my shame. The bride of Dracula is writing Dracula stories about how he sucks. I cannot Asian squat any longer right now. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm a disgrace to my Chinese ancestors. I am going to read this book or else. And that book is... Hey, I'm Rachel, this is Let Me in the Library, and today we're going to do my February TBR. As usual, I have a monthly dice game that I will always do. I roll 6 20-sided dice, and depending on what the dice land on, that chooses what it is I'll be reading based on some prompts that are always in the description. So go check them out if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But for everybody who's caught up, we're going to get right into the rolling right now. Okay, it's time to roll. Just gonna move these from exactly where they fell. This one too. Okay, so we have a 5, an 11, a 12, another 12, a 13, and a 19. Welcome back from rolling. So now we're going to talk about everything that I rolled, what it means, and what I'm going to read. So first off, I got a 5, which is a spin the bottle. I lay out a bunch of books and I spin some sort of bottle. Hate to be the person who's going to drink this right after I did this, but the book that I landed on was Shipped. This is a romance, perfect for the season of love that we are currently in, and this is about 2 coworkers who have to go on a cruise together for work for some reason, and it has been described as the Unhoneymooners but better. I've said this before, I don't know how that's possible. I thought the Unhoneymooners was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars and I loved it so much. It was pretty corny to a degree at the end, and it was fade to black, so maybe that's where this will be different. But I am going to be buddy reading this with Mo from the Roomies Digest, and we are both really excited to get into this book. The next thing that I got was an 11, which is an A to Z generator. I put the A to Z generator on my phone and screen recorded it as proof for you that I got an X. And I was really stumped for a while. I actually ended up reading 2 books that already could have counted for this in the month of February. The first is C is for Country by Lil Nas X, who everybody knows. Love that guy. And the other one was Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram X. Kendi. So I already read those 2, but I decided to continue on with this prompt and pick a different book. And the book I ended up with is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. It follows the journey that he takes from his preconceived notions that he had before he really did any research on what it means to be anti-racist rather than being racist neutral. And it breaks down each of the preconceived notions that he had. Black History Month is definitely not the only time that you should be reading books like this, but it is start to, reassess and remember, when was the last time that I educated myself on something like this, and it's a good reminder to make sure we incorporate that stuff into our reading. Okay, next was a really fun prompt, which was a 12, and I ended up getting 2 of these. A 12 is a playlist picks prompt. So for this, I end up opening Spotify. I basically went to the classic playlist I pick all the time, which is my kickboxing playlist, and I clicked next a bunch of random number of times, and the first song that I ended up on was Tomorrow by Mika. This song has some lyrics that basically say, you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, so basically, let's just enjoy our lives, let's just be in love. The song itself has, a very nice message in that way, where it's no matter what happens, let's just have a good time tonight and be with each other. So the way I interpreted this was looking at a specific book that I've had on my TBR that I really want to get read this month. There's a very specific scene in which 2 people kind of hook up in a car the same way that it's described in the lyrics of this song. And the reason that they kind of do that is because of the impending doom of what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day and in the future, and just this feeling of I have no idea what's going to happen, so fuck it. You only live once. I don't care anymore. Existentialism. So I know that's probably not what Mika was going for, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And so the book that I am choosing for this prompt Sleeping Giants. I have been meaning to pick this back up because it is my favorite book of all time, and JLo was very kind enough to get me a copy of my own. If you don't know what Sleeping Giants is about, let me tell you all about it. This is essentially a story about a team of scientists, linguists, and pilots, and various other people who are tasked with joining the force behind this very strange metal hand that appeared not too long ago. They unearthed it in the ground, and the strange thing is, while testing the hand and trying to understand what kind of metal this is, maybe where it came from, its origins, from different cultures, nothing seems to make sense with what we currently know about our world. If you carbon date it, it's way too old to have been made by any civilizations that we know about on Earth, and it seems to suggest that there's something much bigger going on. Maybe there's more than one body part that's made of metal buried in the earth. It is a fantastic sci-fi epistolary novel, and I love it so much with all my heart. I love the audiobook as well, but I'm excited to also have a physical copy so I can follow along with it right here. So the next thing that I ended up getting on my playlist when I clicked next a bunch of times was Kiss Me More by Doja Cat, and the only book that really came to mind for this one was Barbarian Mind. This is the fourth book in the Ice Planet Barbarians series, which is a very smutty book series. And essentially, the reason that this came to mind was because the song Kiss Me More is saying, you know, like, we have a good time, but come on, like, you could smooch me. Like, come on, let's do it. There are a lot of, like, innuendos in the lyrics, and it's not, like, totally rated G, let's just put it that way. So it just made me think, what do I read that's not rated G? Literally the only thing I could think of is Ice Planet Barbarians. The next thing that I rolled was a 13, and that corresponds to a sequel, and so I decided I'm going to be picking up Jade War. This is the next book in the read-along. I was actually on the Jade City live show a couple days ago, and it was a really, really fun time, and I ended up really enjoying Jade City, so I'm excited to see how everything pops off in this book, because things definitely are going to escalate. And I'm also going to be buddy reading this with Yasmin from Yasmin Be Readin', so I'm excited about this, and I hope it's a lot of fun. And the last thing that I rolled was a 19, which is a friend's recommendation. I am actually going to keep this one a secret because I'm doing a bit of a secret TBR vlog video, so I am not going to tell you what it is that I'm reading for this particular prompt, but I will be reading something for that vlog here. Okay, we're going to move along. I cannot Asian squat any longer right now. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm a disgrace to my Chinese ancestors. I'm very sorry. But the club I want to tell you about is the Whiners Book Club. We are going to be reading Castles in Their Bones by Laura Sebastian, and we're going to be discussing this over on Amanda from Ginger Snapped Reads channel. We're probably going to be discussing this on Wednesday, March 2nd. Our guest host is going to be Casey from Casey Can Read. I don't know what this book is about, so I'm going to read the description to you right now. Empress Margaro has had plans for her daughters since the day they were born. Princess Sophronia, Daphne, and Beatrice will be queens. Or else. And now at age 16, they must each leave their homeland and marry their princes. Beautiful, smart, and demure, the triplets appear to be the perfect brides because Margaro knows there's one common truth. Everyone underestimates a girl, which is a grave mistake. Sophronia, Daphne, and Beatrice are no innocents. They've been trained since birth in the arts of deception, seduction, and violence with a singular goal, to bring down monarchies, and their marriages are merely the first stage of their mother's grand vision to one day reign over the entire continent of Visteria. The princesses have spent their lives preparing, and now they are ready, each with their own secret skill, and each with a single wish, pulled from the stars. Only the stars have their own plans, and their mother hasn't told them all of hers. Life abroad is a test. Will their loyalties stay true, or will they learn that they can't trust anyone, not even each other? This is a 528-page book, but that does sound pretty good, and I've also heard that Laura Sebastian's writing is good enough that you are not even going to notice as the time goes by. It sounds pretty fun. It actually sounds a lot like Bridge Kingdom. It sounds pretty interesting to me. The next book club I want to tell you about is the Fantaseries Book Club, and you the people choose what we read, and the next series that y'all chose was the Poppy War series. So the Poppy War is an adult fantasy series. I cannot stress this enough because for some reason people keep categorizing it as YA, and it's not. There are very, very heavy themes in this book, and I highly encourage you to look up the trigger warnings. If you are already in the Fantasy Series Discord, I left a bunch of trigger warnings in the discussion channel, so please check those out before you read this because it definitely can be extremely triggering. But we are going to be reading this for the month of February and discussing it on Christine's channel, The Roomies Digest, and then we are actually going to be cycling our channels for the rest of the trilogy. So we'll read The Dragon Republic and discuss it on my channel, and then we will read The Burning God and discuss it on Jess's channel. So definitely check it out. If you haven't already joined the Fantasy Series Book Club and you want to read this along with us, we would love to have you in the Discord, at the live shows, at the reading sprints. We want to see you there. But let me tell you about the Poppy War first. The Poppy War is an adult fantasy book about a young war orphan named Rin. She was essentially put in a position where her guardians decide that they are going to marry her off to further their criminal empire by marrying her off to a rich older man to merge their families. And she is like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to do that. So the only way out of this predicament is to ace the Keju, which is an extremely, extremely difficult test. The Keju is used to place students in academies that are most appropriate for their skill set, and the only way Rin is going to get out of this is if she aces it. She doesn't just get into an academy, but she gets into the top academy, which is the only one that will offer a full ride scholarship for her to get out of this impoverished situation. So she decides to take this test, and if she passes, she's going to end up in the most prestigious and most vicious military academy that trains people for war. So I think you see where this is going. I will tell you already, because I've read it before, this reads like an easily marathonable anime. It's so good. And I read this by audio before, but I'm going to be reading it physically, hopefully tabbing it if I have some time. And I'm excited to read this along with the rest of the Fantasy Series Book Club, because I know it's a really good one. There's another book club that I'm going to be participating in that is brand new, and that is the Movie Night Book Club that's hosted by the Roomies, Christine and Mo, and they have just announced this book club, and it's very exciting. So the first book they're reading is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And they are reading the books and then streaming the movies that are based on the source material. So I'm going to be reading this, and hopefully I will retain more than I did when I read this the first time years ago, because really, no thoughts head empty, I don't remember what this is about. But I do know, based on the back of the book, that this is about a man who is tasked to go and basically kill androids, and the androids look exactly like humans, so it really gives you that Westworld vibe. You really couldn't quite tell who's a human, who's an android, who's friend, who's foe, and that's sort of the situation that he's grappling with and trying to probably have that understanding of, you know, what really makes a person a person. A lot of identity politics. I guess that's the thing that I'm always reading about, but it's very interesting to see how this will be adapted to the screen, because I've never seen the Blade Runner movies that were adapted from this, but I'm excited to read it with the rest of the book club, and if you haven't joined it yet, I will leave the Discord for the Movie Night Book Club in the description if you want to join it and read it with me as well. The last book club I want to tell you about is the Nonfiction Baddies Book Club, and their choice for this month is The 2000s Made Me Gay. Today's gay youth have dozens of queer peer heroes, both fictional and real, but Grace Perry did not have that luxury. Instead, she had to search for queerness in the teen cultural phenomena that the early aughts had to offer. In Lindsay Lohan's Fall from Grace, Gossip Girl, Katy Perry's I Kissed a Girl, country era Taylor Swift, and Seth Cohen jumping on a coffee cart. And for better or worse, these touchpoints shaped her identity, and she came out on the other side, as she puts it, gay as hell. Next up, I want to talk to you about blackathon. So this is a really cool readathon that's happening this month, and I am going to be joining the SFF team. Excited that there are a lot of community activities to still participate in, and generally it's a very loose rule type of readathon where you don't have to read every particular prompt that you're given for your team. It's just definitely a way to encourage you to read more lit by Black authors about Black characters. So highly encourage you to check that out. But let me tell you about my TBR on the SFF team. So the first prompt is to read a book that explores the duality of loyalty and betrayal. And the book that I chose for this is The Ballad of Black Tom. I didn't know this at the time. I actually did already read this, but actually explores the story by H.P. Lovecraft called The Horror at Red Hook, and it takes it from the perspective of a different character, which didn't really get to be explored fully, and it instead fully realizes him as a character and changes a lot of the aspects in terms of the setting and the characters and the overall message of the story by completely recreating what really is going on here, while still, you know, kind of making it a love letter to Lovecraft, and yet also disparaging him for his very racist ideals. So it is a very, very interesting way of, you know, expressing that the author Victor Laval has said before. And next up is a prompt to read a book with trans spectrum rep. So I'm going to be rereading Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I love Pet. It's a great book. This essentially talks about the monsters that we see in regular life and the monsters that we perceive from kind of like kids' cartoons, where you expect it to be like a large hulking figure with maybe like, you know, fur or like different color spots in it, kind of like Monsters University, and that's what you might perceive as a monster, but there are plenty of monsters that still live among us, and it generally explores that with the lens of the main protagonist, Jam, who is a young trans girl with selective mutism, and there's a really loving family situation here, a loving best friend, and that part really warms my heart, but there also is an overall message which I think is really important. So I'm hoping to reread this and also pick up the prequel that's coming out this month, Bitter. So I'm excited to pick both of those up for this TBR. And for the next prompt, I don't really have a book for this. That's the one to read a book that's between 312 and 387 pages. I feel less bad about skipping out on this prompt because I am also going to be picking up the group book, and I really don't think any of the things I've already mentioned actually fit with that page number prompt, but the group book is Escaping Exodus, and I'm excited to read this one because I've heard really, really good things about this as a great sci-fi. Escaping Exodus is the story of a young woman named Saskia Calais, heir to the command of the biological, city-sized starship carved up from the insides of a space-faring beast. Her clan has just now culled their latest ship, and the workers are busy stripping down the bonework for building materials, rerouting the circulatory system for mass transit, and preparing the cavernous creature for the onslaught of the general populace still in stasis. It's all a part of the cycle her clan had instituted centuries ago: excavate the new beast, expand into its barely living carcass, extinguish its resources over the course of a decade, and then escape in a highly coordinated exodus back into stasis until they cull the next beast from the diminishing herd. And of course, there wouldn't be much of a story if things didn't go terribly, terribly wrong. I have to tell you about my shame, which is my carryovers from the previous month. The first couple ones I have are Fox 8 and The Paper Menagerie. And I also have Sleeping Giants. So basically, I didn't get to reread any of my favorite books yet. But that's definitely something on the TBR for this month. If you want to know what these are about, I talk about them in my January TBR, but I'm not going to waste your time repeating them because I need to move on to some other carryovers that I have, including Where the Drowned Girls Go. Also talked about this in the January TBR, but this is the new book in the Wayward Children series. I really need to read this. Also, for personal reasons, I really need to read this, so I will be getting to that. And then I also have a bit of a drama situation thing of something that's being carried over as well. I'm officially declaring that this is a Priory style thing that's about to happen. I am going to read this book or else. And that book is The Spanish Love Deception. It's honestly sickening to me that I haven't read this yet. Talk about it all the time that this belongs to Casey from Casey Can Read, and I luckily was able to borrow it from her, but I've been stuck at about page 100 for a while, and I really just want to read it, and I feel like the month of February is a good time to do it. It's the shortest month of the year, but it's also the season of love, so I feel like it's the time for me to read this and just get it off the TBR. So if I don't read this by the end of the month, I am officially declaring for you right now in front of the people that I will allow a friend to choose any book off of my shelves and they can take it home. I will mail it to them if needed, and it will belong to them. So that will be my punishment if I don't finish this. I plan to vlog to prove that I actually am reading this and not lying to you, but that is my plan, and that is my way of staying accountable to you. The last thing that I want to tell you about are just the random things that I threw on the TBR for this month. These are not as high priority as the other things, but I do just want to mention them to you now. The first one I have is The Accomplice by Lisa Lutz. This is a story that follows these two best friends who are purely platonic, but for some reason, romance is not what's in the air, murder is what's in the air. It seems like a lot of the times that they hang out, not super great things are happening. A young woman died when they were in college, and now, further into the future when they are both married, one of the main character's spouses ends up dying. And so, of course, these two are kind of suspected for being very close to the scene and seeing that this has happened before, but it is sort of an exploration character study of these two characters and trying to understand, you know, what's really going on and how come these crimes are happening and what's their deal? Are they really involved? Is one of them an accomplice, perhaps? So I read The Swallows last year and I really loved it, so I'm hoping that this one is maybe not as good because I feel like it's hard to top, but at least a good time. The next thing that I want to read is Crying in H Mart because I like depression, apparently. This is a memoir that is written by Michelle Zauner, who is the person who is at the head of the band, Japanese Breakfast, and she writes about losing her mother to cancer. And it's a very, very sad memoir because over the course of the entire book, you see that she is really grieving and she goes through the motions of her life, but she also knows that she is very, very close to losing her mother and a lot of her culture because her mother is Korean, her father is American, and she feels that she's still kind of towing the line in between both of those identities. And on a lighter note, I have The Extraordinaries by, or The Extraordinary by V.E. Schwab, and this follows the same world that exists in Vicious and Vengeful, which we also read for the Fantasy Reese Book Club. This is a graphic novel that follows that same world, and I think it's a very, very different main character who can kind of like see people before they die, like the moment of their death or something like that. So knowing what I know about Vicious, that seems very, very interesting to me, given the abilities and the motives of the other characters. So I think this will be a pretty quick read, but it'll be a pretty fun time. I also have All Boys Aren't Blue, which I've been meaning to read for a really long time, and this is essentially another story of identity about the author and their struggle with feeling that they are enough, just the sort of gender identity and how that dysphoria also comes in with the feeling of being Black and being a person of color and being, you know, not what people expect of you, being that all boys aren't going to fall into a specific categorization of what people think gender is. So this is supposed to be very good. I've heard only great things about it, and I'm excited to pick it up myself. I also have Comfort Me with Apples. People are always talking about this and how it's about like a woman whose like husband has a terrible basement secret or something. So all I need to know, I'm gonna try this out. And I've also got Strange Beasts of China, and this is about these beasts who look like humans, but if they smile, they die. So I don't know much else about it, but it sounds pretty interesting. I also have Recitative. I was recently actually made a Libro FM, like, person who's allowed to receive advanced listener copies for audiobooks, so that's been super cool for me. And I got Recitative by Toni Morrison. And so from this, we're going to be reading this very, very short story that's about these two different girls and how they were basically raised together when they were 8. They were really good friends, but they were separated later on in life, and then it basically ends up with them on opposing sides of a race struggle and just trying to understand, you know, the way that their shared experiences from the beginning could have set them on a similar path, but by being separated in the different circumstances of their life, they end up really interacting with race and racism in very, very different ways. So I have another reread that I really want to get to this month, and that is BlacKkKlansman by Ron Stallworth. I watched the movie BlacKkKlansman some time ago, and I decided to pick up the book, and it was really good. It's such a fascinating story, and it is completely true about a Black cop who basically infiltrated the KKK. Yeah, I mean, do you need to know anything else? It sounds super fascinating, and I thought it was a really, really, really well-told story, and it's just incredible that it's true. The last book I have on this TBR is A Dowry of Blood. I think this is a Dracula type of story where, like, the bride of Dracula is writing Dracula stories about how he sucks. Saved from the brink of death by a mysterious stranger, Constanta is transformed from a medieval peasant into a bride fit for an undying king. Dracula. But when Dracula draws a cunning aristocrat and a starving artist into his web of passion and deceit, Constanta realizes that her beloved is capable of terrible things. Finding comfort in the arms of her rival consorts, she begins to unravel their husband's dark secrets. With the lives of everyone she loves on the line, Constanta will have to choose between her own freedom and her love for her husband. But bonds forged by blood can only be broken by death. You know she's not going to choose her husband. Come on. He sucks. That is my TBR for the month of February. I promised myself I was not going to overload my TBRs, but I'm pretty sure I have like almost 30 books on this one, so yikes. I'm really hoping that I can actually get to all of this stuff. I am actually going to be traveling again this month for a little bit. Last month I really overestimated because I could not read as much as I said I was going to. I was away for 2 weeks, partially for work and partially not for work, but it definitely cut down on my reading time. But I have been watching Goblin, and it's really good, so at least I'm keeping that promise to myself. Anyway, let me know what it is that you are reading in the month of February that you are most excited to get to this month. If you're participating in Blackathon, if you are reading anything for Valentine's Day or anything like that, or just generally whatever you're excited about, I always love to hear about that stuff from you. But that's it from me. I'm Rachel. This is Let Me in the Library. I'll see you next time. Bye.